The street outside my cafe in Paris was quiet. People talked softly. Cups clinked. I was halfway through my coffee when my phone lit up. It was my mother. She wasn't upset. She was excited. "We gave your brother the keys," she said. "He's inside the house now." She meant my house. I didn't ask which keys. I didn't ask why. I already knew. The spare set. The ones I'd trusted them with just in case. I pictured them standing there together, handing my brother something that wasn't theirs to give. I didn't rush. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I took another sip of coffee and watched a bus roll past. 3 weeks earlier, I had sold the house. Quietly, legally, completely. The papers were signed. The money was cleared. The new owner was already scheduled to arrive. My parents didn't know. My brother didn't know. My phone buzzed again. "He's so grateful," my mother wrote. "This will finally help him." I looked at the time on my screen and felt nothing spike. No fear. No anger. Just relief. Before I tell you what happened when they found out, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Because to understand why I stayed calm, you have to understand how long my family had treated my life like something they could rearrange without asking. To understand why I didn't panic, you need to know how things worked in my family. Growing up, my parents didn't treat us the same. My brother David was the one they worried about, the one they protected, the one who always needed a little help. I was the one who handled things, paid on time, fixed problems, stayed quiet. When David lost jobs, they called me. When David needed space, they used my house. When David messed up, they explained it away. They never asked if it was okay. They assumed it was. They told me it was temporary. They told me it was family. They told me I was strong enough to handle it. Over time, that became my role. I didn't complain because complaining never changed anything. It just made things harder. When I bought the house, my parents were proud. Not because I owned something, but because it solved a problem for them. There was always somewhere David could land. Somewhere safe. Somewhere paid for. They kept a spare key for emergencies. Fires. Floods. Broken pipes. That's what they said. But emergencies in my family always meant David. So when my mother called from back home, excited and smiling, telling me they'd given David the keys, it wasn't shocking. It was familiar. It was the system working the way it always had. What changed was me. Selling the house wasn't about money. It was about stepping out of a role I never agreed to play. I didn't warn them because warnings had never helped before. I stayed calm in Paris because I wasn't caught off guard. For the first time, I was ahead of the problem, and David was about to find out what happens when the safety net is quietly removed. I finished my coffee and walked along the river, phone in my pocket, letting the city move around me. I didn't need to check messages to know what was coming next. In my family, silence never lasted long. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time it was my father. His voice was sharp, already upset. "What did you do?" he asked. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What's going on?" Just that. I told him the truth. I sold the house. He went quiet for a second. Then his voice rose. "You had no right. David is inside. We gave him the keys." "I know," I said. "You embarrassed us," he snapped. "You made us look foolish." That word mattered more to him than anything else. Not trespassing. Not trust. Appearances. I explained it slowly. The sale. The closing. The date. The fact that the house wasn't mine anymore when they handed over the keys. I kept my voice even. I didn't rush. My father kept interrupting. "Where is David supposed to go?" he asked. "That's not my problem," I said. The line went dead. A few minutes later, David texted. Short. Angry. "Why would you do this to me?" Like the house had always been his, and I'd taken it away out of spite. I didn't reply, because this wasn't about hurting him. It was about stopping something that had gone on too long. Back at my hotel, I sat on the bed and looked at the message again. I felt steady, not proud, not guilty, just done. For years, They moved me around to keep David comfortable. This time, I stayed where I was. And the problem finally had to face itself without my address attached to it. The call from my mother came that evening. Her voice was tight, rushed. "There are people at the house," she said. "Strangers. They're saying David can't be there." I told her the truth again. "They're the new owners." She went quiet, then angry. "You should have told us." "I didn't have to," I said. "It wasn't mine anymore." She tried a softer tone. "David is scared. He thought this was settled." "It was," I replied, "just not the way you planned." In the background, I could hear David arguing with someone. Doors opening, voices rising. Not panic, confusion. The kind that comes when a safety net disappears. My mother asked me to fix it, to call someone, to explain, to smooth it over. "I can't," I said, "and I won't." The line went silent again. Later, a text came from David. One sentence. "Where am I supposed to go?" I didn't answer. Because for years, every solution pointed back to me. My space, my money, my calm. That night, for the first time, the problem stayed where it belonged. Not with me. The next morning, I woke up to messages I didn't read right away. I already knew what they would say. In my family, when plans fail, blame travels fast. When I finally looked, there were missed calls from both my parents. One long message from my mother, short ones from David. None of them asked how I was. None of them asked why I sold the house. They only wanted to know what I was going to do next. That was new. For years, they decided first. I reacted later. My mother wrote, "We never thought you'd do something like this." I smiled at that. They had never thought about what I needed either. I replied once. Just one sentence. The house was mine. I made a decision. Nothing else. David sent another message. "I just need a few weeks," he wrote. "You know I'll figure something out." I'd heard that before. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. And I was always expected to carry the weight. I didn't respond. I got dressed, walked outside, and sat in the morning light with a cup of coffee. I felt calm, not free, not happy, just calm. For the first time, no one had access to my space, my money, or my choices. And once that door closed, I knew I wouldn't open it again just to make things easier for them. When I flew home a few days later, the house was already someone else's. New locks, new curtains, a different car in the driveway. I drove past slowly and kept going. I didn't feel sad. I felt finished. My parents wanted to meet. I agreed, but only in a public place. A diner near the highway. Neutral. No history attached to it. They were already seated when I arrived. My mother looked tired. My father looked angry. David wasn't there. "He's staying with a friend," my mother said quickly, like that was supposed to fix something. My father leaned forward. "You could have handled this better," he said. "You made things hard for everyone." I nodded. "Things were already hard," I said. "I just stopped carrying them." My mother reached for my hand. I moved mine back. "You're punishing your brother," she said. "No," I replied. "I stopped rescuing him." That word landed badly. My father said I was being selfish, that family helps family, that I'd crossed a line. I looked at them and realized something simple. They weren't upset about the house. They were upset because their backup plan was gone. "I'm not discussing this anymore," I said. This wasn't a mistake. They stared at me like they didn't recognize me. And maybe they didn't, because the version of me who always said yes wasn't sitting at that table anymore. After that meeting, things went quiet in a way I hadn't felt before. Not angry quiet, careful quiet, like everyone was waiting to see if I would change my mind. I didn't. David stopped texting, not because he understood, but because there was nothing left to ask for. My parents called less. When they did, the conversations stayed on the surface. Weather, appointments, anything but the house. That told me more than arguments ever could. A week later, my mother asked if I could help David with a deposit on an apartment. She said it gently, like she was testing a bruise. "No," I said. She sighed. "I just don't want him to struggle." "I struggled for years," I replied. No one stepped in. She didn't answer. David eventually found a place. Small, far from where he wanted to be. He complained to anyone who would listen, but he signed the lease himself, paid the first month himself. That mattered. I noticed something else too. My parents stopped making plans that included my money or my space. They asked instead of assumed. Sometimes they didn't ask at all. Life didn't fall apart like they warned me it would. It adjusted, and once it did, I understood something I should have learned sooner. Letting go didn't destroy my family. It only removed the part of it that was built on me holding everything up. Time did what arguments never could. It showed everyone what was real. David managed. Not smoothly, not happily, but on his own. He worked more hours. Cut back. Missed a few things he wanted. Nothing tragic happened. The world didn't collapse. My parents adjusted too. They complained less. Planned smaller. When something went wrong, they handled it themselves. I could hear it in their voices. Less confidence. More effort. One night, my mother said it out loud. "He's different now. He has to be," I replied. She didn't argue. I noticed the biggest change in myself. I slept better. I stopped checking my phone the moment it buzzed. I made plans without explaining them first. Small things, but steady ones. David sent me a message months later, not asking for help, just telling me he'd started a new job. The tone was flat. No warmth. No anger either. I replied with 2 words. "That's good." We didn't talk again after that. Some people think distance is punishment. It isn't. It's information. It shows you who can stand when you step back. Looking around my life, I saw fewer people, but fewer problems too. The house was gone. The role was gone. The expectation was gone. And in its place was something quiet and solid, a life that finally belonged to me. Not because I fought for it, but because I stopped giving it away. The hardest part wasn't losing the house. It was watching how quickly everyone adjusted once I was no longer an option. Holidays came and went. Smaller, quieter, less polished. My parents hosted less. When they did, they planned carefully. No extra plates. No just-in-case beds made up. David showed up late sometimes. Left early. No one rearranged the day around him. I noticed my parents talked differently now. Less certainty. More pauses. They asked questions instead of making plans out loud. They sounded older. Tired in a way that comes from finally carrying their own weight. One afternoon, my father said something I never expected. "We should have handled things differently." He didn't say sorry. He didn't explain, but he said it. I nodded. That was enough. I thought about the house then, about how long it had stood as a safety net no one respected, how it had been treated like a shared resource instead of something I earned. Selling it didn't fix my family. It showed me the truth. Some people only feel close to you when they can use what you have. When that access is gone, so is the closeness. And that tells you everything you need to know. I didn't lose a home. I gained something better. Clear space. Clear choices. And the calm that comes when your life finally runs on your terms, not someone else's expectations. I still think about Paris sometimes. Not the city itself, but how steady I felt sitting there, far from everything they thought they could control. That calm never left me. The house never came up again. Not directly. It didn't need to. Everyone understood what it meant. The line had been crossed, and then quietly erased. My parents learned to ask before assuming. Sometimes they didn't ask at all. David stopped expecting answers from me. We speak now and then, politely, like people who share a past but not a plan. That's okay. I didn't cut anyone off. I didn't make speeches. I didn't punish anyone. I just stopped making my life available for other people to manage. Looking back, selling the house wasn't the bold move. Staying calm was. Calm confused them more than anger ever could. It forced them to face the problem without me absorbing it first. People think boundaries have to be loud. They don't. Sometimes they're quiet decisions made weeks before anyone notices. I don't regret the sale. I don't regret the silence. I don't regret choosing myself. The house was just a building. What I sold was the role I'd been playing for years. And once it was gone, so was the expectation that my life existed to make theirs easier. That was the real freedom.